The Second World War, which lasted from 1939 to 1945, was one of the deadliest conflicts in human history. Yet, the events that led to this global catastrophe began long before the first shots were fired. The origins of the war are deeply rooted in the aftermath of the First World War, which ended in 1918. Europe was left devastated. Millions of people had lost their lives. Entire cities were destroyed, and national economies were in ruins. Borders were redrawn, new countries were created, and old empires were dismantled. Germany, in particular, faced harsh penalties under the Treaty of Versailles. The treaty imposed massive financial reparations, severely restricted Germany's military, and forced it to cede valuable territory. For many Germans, these terms were humiliating. They blamed their government and the international community for the country's suffering. This widespread resentment created fertile ground for radical political movements that promised strength, revenge, and renewal. Amid this climate of anger and uncertainty, the National Socialist Party, led by Adolf Hitler, began to rise. Hitler's vision of a strong, united Germany appealed to millions. He promised to reverse the humiliations of the Treaty of Versailles, rebuild the economy, and restore national pride. At the same time, Hitler propagated dangerous ideologies of racial superiority, blaming Jews, communists, and other minorities for Germany's economic and social problems. By 1933, Hitler had become Chancellor of Germany. Within months, he consolidated absolute power, turning Germany into a totalitarian state. Political opponents were imprisoned or silenced, the press was controlled, and propaganda flooded every aspect of daily life. Education and culture were reshaped to glorify the regime and its ambitions. Hitler's rise created not just a domestic threat, but a looming danger for Europe as a whole. During the 1930s, the global economy was also in crisis. The Great Depression had spread from the United States to Europe, causing widespread unemployment and social unrest. Economic hardship made populations more susceptible to extremist promises of stability and national revival. In Germany, Italy, and even parts of Eastern Europe, authoritarian leaders gained popularity by promising strong leadership and decisive action. The stage was set for conflict, and Europe's fragile peace was eroding. By the late 1930s, Hitler began testing the limits of international tolerance. In 1936, German troops reoccupied the Rhineland, directly violating the Treaty of Versailles. Then, in 1938, Germany annexed Austria in what became known as the Anschluss, uniting the two countries without significant opposition from other European powers. Later that same year, Hitler turned his attention to the Sudetenland, a German-speaking region of Czechoslovakia. Britain and France, hoping to avoid another large-scale war, followed a policy of appeasement. They allowed Germany to annex certain areas, believing that satisfying Hitler's demands would prevent further aggression. Unfortunately, this strategy only encouraged him to push further. Hitler interpreted the lack of resistance as weakness, and his ambitions continued to grow. On September 1, 1939, Hitler launched a full-scale invasion of Poland using a new military strategy called Blitzkrieg, or lightning war. This approach relied on rapid, coordinated attacks, combining infantry, tanks, and air power, designed to overwhelm enemies quickly. The invasion was a clear violation of Poland's sovereignty and directly challenged existing international agreements. 2 days later, on September 3rd, Britain and France declared war on Germany, marking the official start of the Second World War. The invasion of Poland was only the beginning. Over the following years, The war expanded across Europe, Asia, Africa, and eventually the entire globe. Germany, Italy, and Japan formed the Axis powers, while Britain, France, the Soviet Union, China, and eventually the United States formed the Allies. The conflict would go on to cause unprecedented destruction, claiming tens of millions of lives, displacing millions more, and reshaping the political landscape of the world. Cities were leveled, economies were devastated, and the horrors of genocide and mass violence left deep scars that still resonate today. The causes of the Second World War were complex, but a few key factors stand out. Political instability, economic hardship, aggressive nationalism, and failed diplomacy all contributed to the outbreak of hostilities. Hitler's ambitions, combined with the world's initial inaction, allowed the conflict to escalate into a global catastrophe. Understanding how the war began is not only a study of history, it is a reminder of the dangers of extremism, the importance of international cooperation, and the consequences of ignoring threats until it is too late.